Our guest today used music as his escape from the day-to-day grind. And he says, and I happen to agree with him, we all need some type of escape from our daily life at work. All that upcoming on the next Unity Talks podcast.
Welcome to Unity Talks, where the hiring experts of Dallas-based recruiting firm Unity Search engage in lively discussion with successful business leaders to dissect their careers and how they got to where they are today, the obstacles overcome to reach their success, and steps they've taken to stay at the top of their respective fields. So listen in as we provide you with the thought-provoking conversation and ideas that keep industries moving forward.
And welcome back to another edition of the Unity Talks podcast, where we meet with leaders all across DFW in the area of accounting, finance, tax, and I'm going to add information technology, though our guest today is not information technology. And we talk to them about how they got to where they're at in their career and what keeps them there. And today's guest is Jeff Burns, who is the Senior Director of Accounting and Finance, correct?
That's correct.
At CarOffer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Been there at CarOffer for just over a year or so?
Just over a year. Yeah, I started last May. I started there.
Yeah, so 1 year into the pandemic, you're starting a new job, which can be, I would assume, shaky. Did you start in the office or were you remote?
We actually started in the office. Our founder and our CEO, the idea guy, he is very strong proponent of working together face to face in the office. So we took a lot of precautions, had lots of social distancing, but we were in the office from
awesome.
At least since I started.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, why don't you give us a quick little infomercial on who CarOffer is and what CarOffer does? Because I hadn't heard too much of it. I've heard of it, but not a lot.
Yeah, no, CarOffer is a very new company. It was only started in 2019. But it is essentially a stock market for used cars and the supply of used cars to over 10,000 dealerships across the country. Our customers will go on to what we call our matrix, and they will make selections for different vehicles that sell well in their markets. And they'll also put on our site vehicles that aren't selling so well in their markets. We'll look for different dealerships in other parts of the country that may have a need for those vehicles and facilitate the trading, facilitate the transportation, the transfer of title, the whole 9 yards.
So it is a one-stop shop, basically. Companies, your customers is what you mentioned, are these are car dealerships.
These are car dealerships.
So correct. They're able to outsource all of the, we'll call it the back office functions and the front office of looking at cars, I'm sure, through technology to CarOffer.
Well, yeah, and the pandemic actually kind of really gave our business a lot of fire, because before the pandemic, a lot of these dealers were going to live car auctions to get their supply for used vehicles. We kind of took those live auctions out of the picture, and now they can do everything, set it up and forget it online, and they just monitor the cars that get selected and get shipped to them. So,
Jeff, man, it's crazy how much technology has woven itself into the fabric of our everyday life. Right?
Absolutely.
Because you've got Carvana, right, where you can go and you see it from the side. It's this cool little thing, where it's like a vending machine for cars. And then you've got Vroom, and they're just showing up on your front door. And you've got CarOffer. And so technology and the pandemic has really accelerated all of those functions, which is great for your business.
Absolutely. And, we actually got acquired, 51% of our business got acquired by Car Gurus at the beginning of 2021. And we're kind of now morphing into a one-stop shop, partnering with some of their other products where you can sell your vehicle, finance a new vehicle, have it delivered to your house, all from the comfort of your own couch.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we need to give a background on Jeff. We always kind of give a little bit of a resume background just so we can level set with our audience who our guest is. So from San Antonio, I think it's on the Seguin side, right? So you're just east of San Antonio then.
Yes. No, I grew up in Seguin, small town, kind of in between San Antonio and Austin. So
Yeah, and then and a big UT fan, went to UT. I think you did the 5-year program at UT, got your master's in accounting.
I did. Yeah, I went to UT in business and did the 5-year professional accounting program to get my master's in accounting, and got my CPA license shortly thereafter.
Yeah, public accounting. Well, before we get into that, you decided not to follow in the parents' footsteps.
Yeah, so both of my parents are actually in the medical field. My mother is an RN, and they're both retired, but my mother was an RN at Southwest Texas, or excuse me, Texas State now.
There you go. I still remember it as Southwest Texas too. We've dated ourselves.
Yeah, a little bit. And my father was a CRNA at the hospital there in Seguin for years, and so I was always around the medical profession growing up, but I didn't really enjoy having people's lives in my hands. So I kind of, I'd always enjoyed business. I was always good at math. I always had that entrepreneurial spirit. So yeah, it was a pretty easy fit for me to go into business rather than, taking care of people's lives.
I hope that no one's going to kill someone in business. If you screw up in business, it's like, okay, let's learn from that and let's not make the same mistake and start over.
Exactly. My mistakes might maybe cost some money, but no one's losing a life if I mess up.
I hope not. We're glad that you decided not to be in the medical profession.
Yeah.
We'll take it that way. So went to UT, 5-year program, EY, and for the most part of your career, you've been technical and financial reporting. Right?
I have, yeah. After EY, I kind of started in financial reporting and technical accounting at Zale Corporation. And I've really been doing that. I did that for about a decade, and just recently, the last 3, 4, 5 years, I've been more into the controller vein of things and more of the leadership of the accounting and finance groups.
How would you describe, we talk about financial reporting and the differences between that and operational accounting functions. How would you put financial reporting in layman's terms for someone who's never done that? What is the role? It's a story.
It's absolutely a story, and it's basically taking all the complex transactions and what's going on with a business and putting it into layman's terms for investors. You're taking everything that's going on with a company and boiling it down to a attractive story and something that is digestible by your everyday investor that may not have all of the industry experience. So I really enjoyed it because it's a profession where you really get to see a high level of the business. You get to see everything from start to finish under the business. You don't really kind of get stuck in one process too deep. You're able to really see the bigger picture of what the company is and where it's going.
Contrast that with more of your day-to-day operational. How would you describe the difference between financial reporting and the day-to-day operational functions?
It's financial reporting is, to me, the biggest difference is financial reporting. You're really looking at what has happened in the past. You're telling the story 3 months in arrears. You're telling it a quarter in arrears, and you're telling a story of where the company is likely to go or where the company is hoping to go, but you really have to be careful about what you put out there for the general public to know. Whenever you were actually in operations in more of a controller type role, you're dealing with the here and now, and what types of accounting transactions are happening today, and what's the best process or the best way to actually speed up this process and get things moving efficiently and smoothly.
Jeff, I'm a terrible writer.
Okay.
You know, if I want to write something, first off, when I was in college, my wife, she would correct all my papers I would have to write, and she'd give it back to me, and it was such a frustrating thing for me because she would just bleed all over it, and it was miserable. She was always right, too. I think that's probably the most frustrating thing about it. When I've heard it said that when you are in financial reporting, you have to be a pretty good writer.
You really do. That is something that I was not really expecting whenever I first got into it. But you have to be very good at being succinct with your thoughts, and you have to be an incredibly technical writer in a sense that, the grammar has to be correct. You have to really think about a lot more than just the math side of things. Because it's not only just presenting it in a an understandable and technically correct way, but it goes so far as to the design of the page whenever you get into different things like a proxy statement that affords you a little bit more ability to be creative with how things are laid out. So there's a lot more involved in it than just the accounting debits and credits.
This is why I'm sitting in my chair and you're sitting in that chair, because I do good just to get by speaking, barely, and I can barely do that appropriately. And you do such a good job on the writing and thinking of the proper word to say. So I want to go back to the beginning of your career. Not even the beginning of your career. Let's predate that.
Okay.
You, I think at one point in time I thought, man, you have a hidden talent.
Yes.
Maybe I should be a musician.
Yeah. I music is something that I've loved ever since I was a little kid. In high school, I did all kinds of musicals, and I played guitar. We had a little band that, we didn't do a ton, but, we played a few places, and music's always been a huge part of my life. And, it still is to this day. And there was actually a time in my career, not my career, but time when I was younger that I thought that maybe that would be something that I would pursue long term. But it's not a life that I really wanted to live day to day. It's fun. It's a blast to do, but I can't imagine, if you're successful and being on tour for 40 weeks a year.
Oh, could you imagine? Playing every other night.
It would be unbelievable. So
there's an unbelievable singer, Carpenter. I forget her first name, Carpenter. She died by the time she was 33 years old, and they did a documentary on her. And part of it is they had a gig every other night of the year for 5 years.
Jeez.
And it's just, that's so much. So I could understand. I would not be able to manage that lifestyle. At all.
No, the lifestyle was too much for me. But and to this day, it's still a big part of who I am and what I enjoy doing, and it's one of my primary outlets, one of my escapes from the busyness of work every day and the busyness of life in general.
Yeah, well, we're going to stop on this for a little bit here because I think that's so critical. But I've got to ask, was it a garage band? Like, were you driving mom and dad crazy? They come home from a 12-hour shift and you and your friends are just banging on instruments. And what was this like? We
were lucky in that we had the drummer that we played with. His father had a barn. It was a nice barn, but it was a barn that was disconnected from their house. So it was far enough away that we didn't really bother anyone. kind of out in the country, so his neighbors didn't really hear that much. So
Yeah, when you led with barn, I'm like, okay, it's all good. They were far enough away from anybody, just that
Yeah.
leading statement, barn. We know we're good.
yeah.
And so all through school, through college, are you gigging at nights? Are you picking up?
I didn't really gig a whole lot in college. I played once or twice, but it was mostly just picking up for enjoyment. Had some good friends that were in bands, so I'd go play with them, not at gigs or anything, but we'd just go hang out at somebody's house and play till the sun came up or something. So
Yeah, that's
was fun.
Fantastic. All right, so let's go back where I said that we would want to pause, and we're just going to
Sure.
kind of pull on this thread for a little bit because I think this is important. This is what you do for a release, right? To exercise your mind on something different, to have silence where some people may take a walk and other people, like for me, if we lived in the mountains, I'd be going on a hike every day if I could. That's my thing. I love that. This is your thing where you can just pick up a guitar and just start strumming to take a break. So why is that so important for you?
It's important to me because if you have to have a certain amount of time to where you can just clear your head and realize that the world's not going to end if you don't get to whatever else is going on at work at that specific moment. I think it's important that everyone really takes time to recharge their batteries, refresh their mind and their spirit, and get back to a good headspace that will enable them to do a better job in their profession, in their lives, in their family lives.
I was just going to ask you about that specifically. Do you feel that it allows you to come back to work on a daily, weekly basis better, and your employees where they're better, they're sharper, they're performing at a higher rate if they have something outside of the day-to-day grind of work?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely something that, as a leader of a team that I really try to encourage, is I don't want anyone's life to be solely work. We make this work thing out to be so important, and there's so many other really important things in life that we need to make space for. And for me personally, especially whenever I get really busy with certain tasks or projects or whatever it is that's on my plate, I'll make a point to actually schedule time to play guitar or to play with my kids or whatever it is to shut my mind off of work and just refresh and breathe a little bit.
So as a leader of people, I'd imagine that back in the day you don't talk about that, right? It's like the instruction was, well, keep it work related. If it's not work related, you don't need to talk to people about it, and a lot has changed since those times, right? And we've you hear the words vulnerability and open up to your team, and which is great, right? We need people to be more vulnerable and have that dialogue. Is this something that you recommend other people talk to about their team? Like, as you get to know your employees, not just from a performance, but just from a personal standpoint, and try to figure out what is their thing, what is their guitar?
Yeah, no, it's different for every person. Some people that may make them a little bit uncomfortable, and so I don't advocate pushing that with anyone. But if that's something that they're open to, get to know them even a little bit on a personal level. And, if, say, they're into playing golf and they've got a golf tournament coming up Friday at 2:00 or something, encourage them to go do that, unless it's, for whatever crazy reason they really can't. but get to know them on a personal level and encourage them to take that time for themselves, because it's going to come back to you tenfold. They're not going to, the last thing you want is for them to get to a point to where they're unhappy at work.
Absolutely. And you're hitting on something there with, not everybody's going to be comfortable with that. So, sometimes you become a new manager or a new leader, and and you think, well, I'm going to get to know my people really well, and you're forcing it down their throat. Like, well, what did you do this weekend? And they're just not the type of person to open up. And so you really have to read that situation.
Yeah, you do, for sure. And, I guess maybe I'm lucky that it's somewhat easy for me to kind of pretty quickly tell if they're going to be open to that or not, because a lot of times they'll be the one approaching me about what they did this weekend before I even approach them. So, but you got to take a second to read that person, and if it's just, hey, did you have a good weekend? Yes, no, and that's really all they want to say. That's totally fine. That's just their personality, and
sometimes even the mechanics of that is if you start first.
Yeah.
Like, just you start first. And then if they engage in that, next thing you know, you're down the path of learning about them, which tightens the employer-employee relationship and bond, which is what we want.
Absolutely.
And if you start first, and you could just tell that they're, yawn and eyes are glazing over, and they're just, okay, well, what about those TPS reports? You know that they're ready to get back to the job.
Yeah.
And either that's the type of person they are, and they're never going to get there, or you just haven't knocked down that little barrier yet.
Yeah.
And not force it.
Yeah. And for some people, it's going to take some time if it's ever going to happen. So don't push it, and just, like you mentioned, open that door first and see what happens.
So let's go through the mechanics of it, because you said something a few minutes ago where you said, I actually schedule it.
Yeah.
I'll make a list of things I need to do, and I'm going to schedule a break, whether it's, tending to a garden, or, like we said, or picking up a guitar, or listening to music, or whatever the case, whatever your quiet, your silence time is, where you give your mind a break. Why are you scheduling it?
I am a habitual list maker, whether it's work or personal. If it's something that I need to do, I put it on a list. And to be honest, I think part of it is I really get a sense of accomplishment in crossing those things off the list, as silly as that may sound. But it could be something like take out the trash, and you know what? If I get to cross it off the list, that's a bonus for me that day. I have far too many days where I add more things to my list than I cross off. But, every day I will be sure to put on at least a few things that are completely not work related. That's just, a small chore around the house, or play guitar, or there's something that needs to be fixed that, I haven't had a chance to get to yet, or, walk the dog, or something like that. I'll put it on the list just so that I remember to take that time to do that thing that really helps clear my head and refresh me, like we've kind of been talking about.
Yeah, you hear that a lot, where people say you've got to schedule for yourself. Your schedule at work is so much dominated by other people's priorities.
Absolutely.
And you've got to schedule that time for yourself, or you're never going to take it. And then your work product can degrade, or you can feel overwhelmed. And so you've got to put it in that schedule. My question for you is, because I'm imagining myself do that, and I've done this a few times before where I haven't done it yet. It wasn't on my list, and I haven't done it. So I'll put it on my list, and then I'll cross it off immediately. But I haven't done it. And just knowing that it's on there and I know I've already crossed it off really forces me to have to do it, because now I got to execute on it.
Yeah, you can't cross it off without doing it.
That's my little trick, is like, I really don't want to do it, so I'm going to go ahead and cross it off even though I haven't done it yet, and it's really going to force me, because then I'm lying to myself, and I can't stand that.
And I kind of do the inverse sometimes. I'll find myself where I'll do something and then I'll go put it on my list so that I can cross it off. And it might gives me a little dopamine hit. I guess,
that's your like on the social media.
Exactly.
You don't rely on other people. You're just relying on your own straight line or check mark through it, to get that dopamine.
Yeah.
This topic, I think, this is why I wanted to stop on this. I think this topic is so important because when you think about everything that's going on in the last couple of years, okay, so, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, but it's so much has changed. We have a pandemic that was totally unexpected and everybody went remote. Technology comes out of nowhere. Companies like yours are a huge benefit to it.
Absolutely.
Then is it good to go back in? Should we not go back in? We have a disparate workforce. They're all over the United States and the world. They don't have to be in the office. Now some companies are bringing everybody back into an office. That's ruffling people's feathers, and they're bristling at that, especially with Elon Musk saying, hey, we're bringing everybody back in. We're not doing this whole remote thing. And that's all over the news because the big news makers make the news, right? And then we have so now we've got the war in Russia and Ukraine. I mean, it's just one thing after another. We've got this impending recession that everybody's talking about. We've got inflation and gas prices. I mean, there's just so many things that we're inundated with. And then when you think about companies and employment, we have a major supply and demand issue. It's a major issue because we've got so many people over the past couple of years who have removed themselves from the workforce. They've retired early. They've moved to a small town. They don't want to do what they were previously doing because it wasn't scratching that itch. And I mean, you've got the baby boomer generation exiting the workforce, which was at the time it's the largest population of people living, right? Now they're exiting the workforce, and we've got the younger generation who aren't as many in number entering the workforce that cannot make up for that exit.
Yeah.
And it's just so much stress all at once.
It is a huge amount of stress. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here when I say that the available market right now for employees is so slim, and it's so hard to find good people right now. It's twofold. You've got to find the really good people, and you've got to keep the really good people.
You nailed
it. There's a really strong movement, I would say, to really increase company culture for really everyone out there. And that's one thing that I think that CarOffer is really good at, is having a really strong, fun environment. But you've got to, it's not just about, the paycheck anymore for so many people. It's so much more about the ancillary items and the other benefits and just the feeling they get when they are working.
Jeff, man, I had a consultant that was working for a client, and she ended her assignment early, and she just said, David, the world has changed, and you can't just push people for deadline after deadline after deadline after deadline year round. And I felt like I was getting pushed for all these, and I need a break. I need to recharge. And so I'm going to end my assignment. I'm going to go travel. That's her guitar. Yeah. That's her music. She's going to go travel. And she's like, we just need that because it's not good for my mental health. And you hit it on the nail on the head when you said, good talent is hard to find, but you got to keep the people. And that's the most important one. You got to keep your good talent right now, and the ancillary benefits outside of just what your compensation is so much more important. And so, I think it's one of these things, I would love to take a page out of your book and say that other people need to really, who lead teams, they don't have to engage in the conversation if someone doesn't want to open up about, yeah, this is what I like to do for my dad. But I feel like they really need to somehow encourage people to have that downtime. You don't have to talk about it to me, but I need you to do that because I need to. That's one way we can show our employees the value we have in them.
Absolutely, yeah. And one thing that I think would be, behoove anyone to really do is, it's hard to mandate people to take time to help themselves, but maybe you mandate time away from work. Like say once a month, no one's going to be working on this Friday, or whatever it is, or I'm not an ideas guy, but come up with something that encourages the use of that time for yourself.
What's really interesting that you just said that, because sometimes you can mandate that, and you can do it to an individual. It doesn't have to be across the board to your department, because you should be able to know your people enough to know that this person responds to something different than this person does.
Yeah.
And an example of that is, right now we have the Men's College World Series that's going on right now. And just a couple of weeks ago, a couple of weeks previous to this, we had the Women's College World Series that was held in Oklahoma. And Oklahoma won it. And they're going to be in the finals for the men's side. This is going to be the first time that potentially has ever been done.
Oh, yeah.
There's a girl that plays for Oklahoma. She just graduated. Her name's Jocelyn Allo, and she has the record for home runs hit in college softball. I mean, she was ridiculous.
The Hawaiian girl?
Yes. And I don't remember what year it was. Maybe it was her freshman, maybe it was her sophomore year, whatever, but she was done, just mentally burnt out. And her coach, Patty Gasso, basically took the bat out of her hands, and she was not allowed to go to practice. She was not allowed to watch videotape. She was not allowed to touch a glove. She was not allowed to do anything for I don't know how long, a semester. I don't know all the but she mandated, you are not allowed to do anything related to this sport, period. You need to be cold turkey, cut loose. And from what I understand, she credits that to the reinvigoration of her career, to setting all the records that obviously she's naturally talented. You don't do what she has done at the plate without being naturally talented. But to your point, she knew what she needed. She knew her player well enough. That's her employee.
Yeah.
She knew her player well enough, and she knew what she specifically needed. And that can be different from someone else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that's so important, to know who your people are and know what drives them. And that's what we are called to do for our employees.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that's, one of the more challenging things of being a people manager is really getting to know each of your employees and what drives them, what's important to them, because you're right, it's different for every single person.
Have you ever gotten away from taking these breaks and what it does to your own mental health?
It can be rough. There's definitely been times where the deadlines were just fast and furious, and we were in way over our heads, where I felt like I didn't have time to take any kind of time for myself. It was, if I wasn't sleeping or eating, I was working. And man, that is just, it wears you out to a level that I'd never been before. And, it got to the point to where as soon as you were done with the project, it was just, I need a week off where I'm not doing anything. I'm not going to talk to anyone about work, or, it got to the point to where, A, I was barely able to hang on, and B, a lot of people weren't. It turned over a huge portion of our accounting and finance team. So.
All right, so you just touched on something there, and I wrote this down earlier from a conversation. You switched to tie this all in. You switched from financial reporting and technical accounting, where you have all these fantastic writing skills. We already established all that stuff. And you were telling the story of the company, of what has happened in arrears.
Mm-hmm.
And you've moved into more of an operational role. And a question you asked yourself was, Jeff, what do you enjoy doing? And to me, and the answer obviously was, yeah, I may have enjoyed financial reporting, but I'm at a point in my time in my career and life where I'd like to look at a different area of the business and impact the here and now.
Yeah.
And to me, that question, what do you enjoy doing, is a question you ask during that downtime, during that quiet time.
Absolutely. And that was actually a pretty large shift in my career, was that change I made from financial reporting to more of the operations side, where I went from a mid-size public company down to a small PE-backed firm that was at the time up and coming, where I was able to get my hands involved a lot more in the operations and really help grow and foster a fairly new company. And in doing that, that's when I really kind of found out that is really what I enjoy, at least at this point in my career, is really building something special. Building, either just an accounting team or, processes and procedures behind the accounting function, and really being able to put my expertise and my experiences in play in places that they're useful.
Here's what I'm hearing you say when I take as we wrap up, when I take this whole thing and try to bundle it in my bundling and putting a bow on it may be as bad as my handwriting, but I'm going to try to do as good as I can here. When you're an employee, you need to ask yourself, what do I really enjoy doing? And we need it. I mean, we need it to be in the field of accounting, finance, tax, information technology, because of a supply demand issue. Mm-hmm. So as an employee, we need to be able to ask that question and know that there's many different avenues within the field of accounting, finance, tax, IT that we can look at. And then we have to have the guts, the courage to go talk to our leadership if we haven't already done and had that, established that dialogue. And that's what we should be doing as an employee, and using that downtime to really contemplate what that is. And then as a leader, we don't want to lose our employees. So we've got to create that environment where they're open and unafraid to come and talk to us. And sometimes that makes, we have to be the first to do that.
Absolutely.
With them. And because we don't want to lose them. And then we got to create that avenue or show them that there is a path. If I think about everything, that's kind of how I would summarize this whole thing, about downtimes and creating that path and having a release to stay within our field.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where you really have to, it helps to lead by example. Be that open book that you want your employees to be with you. Be that open book to them, so that you can foster that relationship between them, so that you can understand what makes them tick, understand where they want to go with their career, and help them get there.
I'm not going to try and top what Jeff just said right there. Be the open book and set the example. So that sums it up better than what I just did. Told you you're a better writer than I am. That sums it up better than what I just did, is lead by example and be the open book. So that's our show for today. We really appreciate y'all dialing in week after week on our show. And Jeff, we thank you today for coming on and sharing some knowledge with us.
Well, thank you so much, David. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And for those out there, we cannot wait till our next episode. It's going to be a great one, and we'll see you then.
If you're looking for the next step in your career or the missing piece for your team, Unity Search has you covered. Whether it's finance and accounting, tax services, information technology, or human resources, Unity Search is here for you with experienced and dedicated hiring professionals. Reach out today and take the next step. Unity Search, placing you first.